All right. And we are I think we're recording. Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, we are. Okay. um, so I guess my question is, so I'm in St. Louis, and in St. Louis we have a very large Bosnian population. Um, and it's interesting because when I was doing some of my projects, I noticed that like there's actually an event at our Contemporary Art Museum that's sponsored by the Bosnian Embassy. Um, anyway, so I just wanted to talk to you about, the process that Bosnians have to go through in order when they're immigrating to the US, and then why St. Louis is such a big hub for the Bosnian population.
Um, so I guess depends. So I actually live in the United States as well as working at the embassy. Um, so I can tell you a little bit about my process. The legal procedures are more for the consulate's office,
Okay.
uh, but I do know there's a few bigger hubs of Bosnian immigrants, St. Louis being one of the biggest ones, but there's also a big hub in Southern California. Um, there's in Jacksonville, Florida, there's in Atlanta, Hartford, Connecticut. I know Utica, New York. There's there's also more so a larger Balkan diaspora in Pittsburgh, where you also have Bosnian Serbs, Croats that immigrated there as well. Um, in Chicago, we have a general consulate's office in Chicago as well. Uh, the cities are usually more open to immigrants. Also, it depends what program, especially if they came after the war, what program they went through.
And which
Or
word would that, can you just for note purposes, which word is
uh,
that?
so I know I personally went through, my family, a church sponsored us to come in Pennsylvania, a Methodist church. There were, I believe the UN HCR was sponsoring, not sponsoring, but they had um, programs that were helping facilitate Bosnians to come over. Various church programs. They did help with a lot of the legal paperwork, so that they could migrate here, as well as pay for the plane tickets and help the families kind of set up in America. That I know my family, we had like a 3-month timeline where my parents had to find a job and start supporting themselves.
That's not a lot of time.
Especially not when you know the language.
Right. Like I'm in a completely different country and I only have 3 months. That's difficult. So when you're saying the war though, you're talking about the Bosnian Serbia war? Which war?
Um, the breakup of Yugoslavia.
Okay.
Uh, Not Bosnia Serbia.
Okay.
So this is not a topic I really should be talking about. Yeah. It's a little bit more complicated in Bosnia. It was a civil war that we experienced, and um, without going into a lot of details, we had a lot of refugees from the 90s, from the whole area, from all of Yugoslavia, escape because of the war. You also had post-war refugees who I know a few families, especially in the Pennsylvania area where my family is, migrated around the 2000s, which was 8 years after the war started,
Mm-hmm.
after it ended. But there were also like delayed processes, or people who were refugees but returned to Bosnia and then applied for either political asylum or immigration, actually like becoming a resident in the United States
Mm-hmm.
for economic purposes.
Okay. So just to give you a little bit of background, so I'm studying at Johns Hopkins University, and um, as just a person to person, um, throw the titles out of the window.
Yeah.
But what I'm interested in understanding more is how in Bosnia did people receive information? So you can mention the war if you want. It'd be cool if you could use that as an example. But did how was news reported about what was happening in Bosnia around that time in around the 2000s? Do you
So you're looking more for like media?
Yeah. So, for example, we've got like CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, and they report news and they're a commercial broadcast system. Is there anything similar to that in Bosnia?
We have a few like in Bosnia media programs. You so they're also divided up among the entities. So in Bosnia, you have two entities in one district, the Federation and the Republika Srpska. So, like for mainly, if you're looking for like media about Bosnia here in the United States, because those are mainly like they're not English service. There's Balkan Insights is one of the biggest ones, I'd say.
Hmm.
Voice of America, as well as Al Jazeera. Uh,
Okay.
they're pretty the biggest media outlets, at least in English language.
And so, Voices of America and you didn't say the Young Turks. Did you say the Young Turks?
No, 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 no.
Al
The,
Jazeera. Yeah. So, do those outlets speak um in the native tongue in Bosnia? Do they, or like if I were
Al
to
Jazeera
travel?
does have. Sorry about that. Al Jazeera does have in the in all three of the Bosnian language,
Oh,
the official languages in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Um,
does
I
Voices
believe
America?
Voice of America does too.
Hmm.
They do. I know that when we have delegations come from Bosnia, they do interviews with them, or they'll do a lot of our media work.
Hmm.
Not for us. I mean, they do it for themselves. We don't sponsor them or anything. But whenever we have a delegation or anybody come, or they'll try to interview the ambassador, um, they do report it to Bosnia and Herzegovina as well, and they have it in their language.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So, do you think like Bosnians listen to Voice of America a lot over there, or not really?
I do believe so. So I don't have the exact numbers on that. But the fact that like when our prime minister came, he interviewed with Voices of America. So it's something that would go back to Bosnia so that we can show like our relationship with the United States.
Do you think that like here in America, like the for the Bosnian populations and immigrants that are here, do you think that they listen to Voice of America more to know what's going on back home? What is so yeah.
So I can't make an official answer on this because I'm not sure. I've never done any data or research on this, but I do know that we have Al Jazeera America. I mean Al Jazeera. Whenever they report anything on Bosnia, I do know that we have at least people who have called into the embassy and said they do listen to, and it does reach a lot of Bosnian immigrants and Bosnian citizens that are in the United States. I don't know how that compares to if they read actual newspapers, Bosnian Herzegovina newspapers, and the media that originates in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't have like
Yeah.
comparison to that because I do know that a lot of it is available online now, so it's easy to access are immigrants, so
Okay, that's okay. One of the reasons why I'm interested in Voice of America, because that's actually the theme of my paper. It is.
you know that they're pretty. I mean, we have at least um, one of their journalists that we have contact with, the embassy employees themselves.
Oh, so there's a good relationship between one of the VOA reporters that are.
Well, I wouldn't like not like personal, but
Yeah.
we know him. He usually is the one that does the interviews whenever we have any delegation or representative come from Bosnia, or even um, with if the ambassador or previous ambassadors gave interviews.
Mhm. So you mentioned how like some people call up and say, "Oh, we were listening to something on a certain channel." Um, do you ever, and that was with Al Jazeera. Does do people call and say, "Oh, I heard something on Voices of America and I want more information," or does that more Al Jazeera's kind of thing?
That's more their thing. I've had um, maybe a few times where somebody has been, they'd never mention it by exact name, but or by like the media outlet, or but if they were concerned about something that they heard about, they'll email the embassy and ask how it will affect them or something along those lines.
So it is
But
safe.
it's not that. I mean, it's not usually all that. At least for the embassy itself, that
Yeah.
common.
So it is, but I mean, but you could, but it's safe to say that I mean, people are listening to VOA here about what's going on. Cool. Um,
I would say at least our diaspora seems pretty well engaged with what's going on in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
and so aside from like VOA and Al Jazeera, what is it a connection through peers and family that's still there, or how is information?
I believe it's mostly through family ties. Uh, Bosnia receives a lot of remittances from whether it's from our immigrants in America, Austria. It's one of it. I forget the exact percentage of our GDP that it was, but Bosnia and Herzegovina receives a lot of remittances from our migrants outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So there's still a very strong connection between the people who left Bosnia and Herzegovina and the citizens who still live there. Um, Also, Bosnia has a very about 1/3 of the population lives outside of Bosnia and Herzegovina, so we have a very big diaspora. So
Yeah, that's a lot of that's a lot of people.
I mean, Bosnia's population isn't. So we have 3.8 million in the country, close to like 4 million in the country, and then we have 1 point. I want to say 3 million out of the country.
Okay. Um, so aside from like your professional life, do you listen to Voice of America, or since I mean, because
I follow Balkan Insights more so than Voice of America. Not to say that I haven't gone on it, I do. I just, for my own purposes, I find it easier to follow Balkan Insight. Also, I'm also a student at George Washington University, so I use a lot more of their resources. A lot more of like I go to the library. I read a lot more scholarly articles than news articles. So
yeah, I'm like that way too. Like I can't with all the studying. It's like the news is like
yeah,
another thing I gotta process, and I'm like, no, I can't. And I work, so it's like,
yeah,
no.
I completely understand.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna pause and save this.